Hi guys, welcome to this video. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button below so that you can keep up with all future videos we provide. This is part one of a series of videos taken from our webinar held earlier in 2021. It's aimed at any adults interested in keeping young people and not so young people safe while using the internet. We started the webinar by posing two questions to the audience. What would happen if you put a huge tub of ice cream in front of a 4-year-old? Well, we know what would happen, okay? Disaster would befall, okay? Fun, nice, but disaster would befall. Children, basically, a 4-year-old will eat and eat and eat that ice cream until they pass out or get sick, okay? My children are grown up, but I remember them doing that sort of thing. If you give them the opportunity, they will avail of that opportunity, and they will avail of it till they are sick, okay? And the reason for that, guys, is very simple. Children and teenagers are simply not able to control their emotional impulses, okay? The two areas of the brain that work hand in hand as adults, the frontal lobe and the emotional center of the brain, as children, they're not connected, okay? And so their emotional impulses will often take over and they have no way of controlling them. So in a way, guys, our job as parents and as carers is to help them control their emotional impulses. So give a child ice cream, they will eat ice cream. Give a child a ton of ice cream, they'll try and eat a ton of ice cream. Okay, and the same goes with anything. Okay, give a child an opportunity to do something and they will do it. They're not bad people, they're not evil, they're just children. That's the nature of the beast. So if we give them something, if we give them an opportunity, they're going to take it. Okay, that's my first question. My second question is a little bit more technical in nature. Okay, it's about social media. And this is a question really that I'm not sure if you've thought through, if you've thought about, some of you probably have. But I've traveled the country in the last 7 years talking to young people, children in primary school, all the way up to leaving certificate. And I've spoken to them about every issue known to man in terms of the internet. And I've always asked them a question because it fascinates me, but also it helps me inform the rest of my talks and everything. The question I ask them basically is what is so fascinating? Why is social media such a draw for young people? Why do kids just love this idea of social media? And so I ask you the same question. Why do you think it is that young people like social media so much? And you might think it's all because of the fun element, and it has an element of that to it, but it's not the main reason. You might think it's because they can chat to their mates, and again, that is part of it, but it's not the main reason. You might think it's being connected with their friends, and again, that is part of it, but it's not that. That is not the main reason why young people are so drawn to social media. Okay, what is it? Well, let me tell you, by far and away, the biggest reason that children and young people like social media is that us adults have no clue about it. That's the key, guys. My generation, probably your generation, I don't know how old you guys are, but I'm guessing that you're all adults. You've probably got children of your own and all that. The older generation, okay, us, we don't have a clue what goes on social media, and kids absolutely love that. They love the fact that they've got an area of their lives where we cannot and do not even understand what goes on in there. Okay. And that is key to it. So two things that we need to take into account here. One, that children will be children. Children do what comes naturally. They are impulsive creatures, and they will do whatever opportunity is given to them, they will take. They love social media. It's an opportunity, and they love social media because they know fundamentally that us adults don't have a clue. Okay. So in the old days, well, before I say that, us human beings fundamentally are social creatures. Okay. We live in societies. We live in groups. It's very seldom that you ever find a human being who lives entirely unconnected, disconnected from the world. It's very, very unusual. And it's normally the case of studies and things like that. The vast majority of human beings, they have to and will always live in some sort of social grouping. And forever, the fundamental social grouping of the planet has been the family group. Okay. And I've titled this slide "In the Old Days." Okay. The family group hasn't changed. We still are fundamentally in the family group. And in fact, the pandemic and the lockdowns have really brought that family group home to us. Okay. Are you happy to let that person in, Sharon? Perfect. The family group is the fundamental unit of society. We have lots of other groups. We have, we have our tribes and our clubs and our churches and our organizations and our political parties. These are all different social groups. But fundamentally, at the end of the day, we have our family and our extended family. Okay. And in the old days, we had physical barriers from the outside world. You see, as human beings, we are always being pestered by the outside world. We are always being pestered by people who want our attention, who want to grab our attention. Okay, so there are people who are trying to sell us things, people who are trying to persuade us to do things, to vote for them, people who want us to follow them, who want to do various things, lots and lots of different people. Okay, all of these people are vying for our attention from every angle possible. And indeed, there are a whole bunch of criminals who are trying to get our attention, trying to get into our lives. And in the old days, we had physical barriers. We could shut and lock the front door and we knew we were safe. We could turn off the one television we had in the house. We could simply turn it off. We could disconnect the telephone. There was only one telephone, a landline, and we could cut the wire of it. We were safe. We knew we were safe. We had these physical barriers. But what's happened over the last 10, 15 years is that the advent of all of this technology has in effect reversed this. What has happened, because we've now taken on board all of this technology, what has happened is that all of the outside influences are now inside the barriers. We have brought them into the most private parts of our lives. We've brought our mobile phones, our tablets, our gadgets, and all of this sort of stuff directly into our house. And we've said, oh, isn't it a wonderful thing? But what we've forgotten is that, in fact, we've destroyed the defenses that we've had, and we've brought them all into our private lives. And we are now struggling with how on earth do we protect ourselves from all of these other people. Now, I'm not saying that these people are bad. I'm not saying they are evil people. The criminals obviously are. But the vast majority of people trying to get our attention are just other human beings. Just other human beings trying to make a living for themselves, trying to feed their families and all that sort of stuff. So this is not, them versus us. This is not I'm not saying that everybody on the internet is evil or anything like that, not in the slightest. What I'm saying is that we as human beings, we need to understand what we've done to ourselves, okay, by bringing all of this technology directly into our lives. Okay, so another slightly different way of looking at it is this, okay. So on the right-hand side, we have you, okay. We have us as parents, and on the left-hand side, we have our children. And what we've done is we've, at a very, very early age, a very, very early time of their life, mostly in primary school these days, as far as my experience goes, kids are getting these devices in primary school. What we've done is we've handed them very proudly a device. Okay, we've given them a device. Now, I'm the same as anybody. I gave my children devices when they were way too young, but in a strange sort of way, I'm extremely lucky. Because my children are old now, they've grown up. They're both at university, right? My son and daughter are both at university. So when I gave my children a device, it wasn't a smart device. It was simply an old Nokia. But I remember that feeling of pride when I handed my child the device, and they very quickly got their head around all the buttons and how to use it. And they were technologically savvy children, and I was very proud of that. So I'm not being judgmental at all. Okay, what I'm saying, though, is that this is what has happened. Us adults, us carers of children, we've handed our children these devices, right? And in effect, what we've done is we've allowed our children to build a box around themselves. Okay, you see, when I was a child, okay, when I was a young teenager, when I was a child, I was very fortunate. I grew up in a house where we had a bedroom each. Me and my three brothers, we each had our own bedroom. Okay, I was very lucky, right? So I had my own private area, right? And I could close the door, and I was private in there. But one thing I couldn't do is I couldn't lock it. Okay, I couldn't lock that door. My parents took all the keys away. There were no locks to any internal doors in our house. And the reason for that was safety. They didn't want me cracking my head open on a shelf or whatever it was and collapsing and not being able to get in and help me. They didn't want me locked in a room if or when a fire broke out or anything like that. So it was logical. But you know, the interesting thing was they still provided me with my privacy. They didn't disrespect my privacy. Simply because they could walk in anytime didn't mean they did. They always knocked. They always asked if it was okay for them to come in, and I would let them in. But the fact is they could get in at any point. What we've done is we've provided our children now with these devices, which has allowed them to put a box around themselves, allowed them to put themselves into an area of their lives, into a private domain where we do not have the key. It would be equivalent of me locking my bedroom door. That's what we've done. We've given our children a private domain, and we've said, here's the key, lock yourself away, and we cannot get in. Okay, and this is a bad thing. Okay, the point is, guys, do you think that that your children are going to let you in? Well, let me tell you what happened, okay? When you gave your child, your primary school child, and remember, I'm generalizing here, but when you gave your primary school child their first smart device, okay, all very excited, maybe it was a Christmas present, maybe it was allowing them to buy it with their communion money or whatever it was, okay? When you allowed them to have their first device, what did they do? Well, the very, very first thing they did was they unboxed it, they went away quietly, and they downloaded every app that they had to have because every other person in their class had it. They were the only one without this particular app, whatever it was. And they downloaded them all. So they downloaded Instagram, they downloaded Snapchat, they probably downloaded TikTok, they downloaded a whole bunch of apps, right? And then what did they do? They set up accounts on those apps. But what they didn't do, okay, is they didn't come running back to you, to mommy and daddy, and say, here, mom, here, dad, here's my password. They didn't do that. In fact, they didn't even tell you what apps they were downloading because they know that we don't really understand any of this sort of stuff. So one thing they did not do is they didn't give you the key to that box that they've created. And here's the thing, guys, they will not invite us into that box. They don't want us there because it's not cool, okay? What they will do, though, is they'll invite any other person into there that they can. Anybody, all of these people that they think are it's so cool to have, all of these strangers, they'll invite in, they will not invite us in. And that's the situation we find ourselves in, guys. We find ourselves in this situation because we have provided our children with technology that is not really very appropriate for them. Okay. We have only ourselves to blame. See, one of the weird things about us, about this generation of adults and parents, one of the weird things is that, you know something, we're quite happy to say no when it comes to alcohol. We're quite happy to say no when it comes to smoking. We're quite happy to say no when it comes to gambling or driving or anything or drugs or whatever. We're quite happy to say absolutely no, you're not going to do that because it's bad for you. But when it comes to social media, we don't have a clue. And so we just say, yes, off you go. Use it. Use the devices. Do whatever you want. Okay. Now, I'm not even blaming us, guys. I'm not blaming you. I'm not blaming anybody. The thing is that technology happens so quickly. It happened so rapidly that we were all left in the dust. And we just responded to it as any human being would. So what we need to do now, guys, is we need to somehow break open the box. Okay, we need to break open this box and get our children out and into safety, or get us in so that we can keep them safe. That's really the analogy I want to use, okay? So I'm going to give you now, this is a very practical slide. So this is a slide that you probably want to take lots of notes on, okay? What you're going to do is, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you some very practical tips on how to break open that box, okay? How to get back into your children's lives. And the very first one is very simple and probably the obvious one, but it's probably a little bit late, okay? If your children are very young, or if you're dealing with children who are very young, then the key is this: don't give them the box in the first place. Don't give them devices too soon. Simple as, okay? And I'm going to be saying that again, okay? In fact, in my personal opinion, and in the opinion of a lot of child psychologists around the world, 13 is probably the earliest you should ever give them an independent device that they can call their own. There's no reason why you can't let them have a shared device and monitor it and let them use your devices. but really 13, when they get to secondary school, is the time that maybe you'll be giving them their own device. Okay. Anyway, if you've already done it, or if you plan to ignore that piece of advice, and that's fine, I think that's okay as well. Okay, you know your children better than anybody. Okay, then before you give them their advice, okay, you need to put some rules in place. You need to put some practical, enforceable rules in place in your house. Okay. And I'm going to give you, I think it's 3 major categories of rules. Okay. The first one is time limits. Okay. Now, the HSE have provided guidelines to parents on what times are appropriate. I don't particularly like the way they've worded it. It's a bit wishy-washy the way they've worded it, but it's there. It's on that website there. So when this is finished, take a screenshot of that or copy it down. The thing is that it's that the HSE have come up with these guidelines. Now, there are better versions of these around the world, and I found a slightly more concise set from the Australian government. So what I've done is I've actually decided to show you the Australian ones. It's pretty much the same. Okay, it doesn't matter where they are. They're pretty much the same, but the Australian ones are a little bit more definitive than the Irish ones. The Irish ones are a little bit wishy-washy, in my opinion. Okay, however, have a look at them. So the first time limit that everybody comes up with is the very early years, your baby to toddler years. Okay, and basically, according to both the Irish and the Australian governments, nobody under the age of 2 should ever have any screen time at all. And the reason for that is because language and social development can be greatly harmed with the use of tablets. There have been studies are coming out of the universities now on how the use of tablets can have a direct impact on language acquisition. So most governments now are saying up to 2 years old, no screen time whatsoever. Okay. And I don't know about you guys, but my goodness, it drives me mad. When I'm walking along the prom here in Galway and I see a young mother walking along with a phone glued to her ear and the child on a tablet, not looking at the sea, not looking at anything, and it just breaks my heart, thinking what is the impact of that on that child later on in life. Okay. The second band of time limit, of screen time limit, is the 2 to 5 year old. Okay, and basically no more than 1 hour of screen time in total throughout the day. Again, it's because of social development, language acquisition, and all of that sort of stuff. Okay. And then the third one is the rest, okay, 5 to 17 years old, okay? Now, the HSE, they do 6 to 18, but that's neither here nor there, in my opinion, okay? What's important here is that they refer to recreational screen time. So what they're saying is from the 5 to the 17-year-olds, no more than 2 hours of recreational screen time. Recreational screen time is your PlayStations, your Xboxes, your YouTube videos, your television, your Nintendo Switches, all of that sort of stuff where you're simply relaxing. And that age group should not have more than 2 hours per day. I think, excuse me, I think that's a fairly broad age limit. I think if you're 6 years old, I don't think you should be spending 2 hours per day on recreational screen time. What they do recognize is that a lot of schools now, particularly with the lockdown, a lot of schools are using technology for education. And so they do need to spend time, doing research and on Seesaw and on all of these different apps, on Zoom and things like this, and Google Classroom and all that. So that is not included in that measure, the screen time. Okay. So I think in terms of time limits, though, I think there's no definitive answer. I think it's down to the parent. I think it's down to the family, the dynamics of the family. I think it's down to the personality of the children. So I think time limits need to be flexible and fluid. Okay. You need to take into account the child's personality. You need to take into account the time in their life that they're at. If they're in an exam year, you're probably going to be more strict than if they weren't in an exam year. Okay. You're probably going to loosen up a little bit during the summer holidays because there's a lot of time on their hands there, and maybe you're going to be a little bit more flexible. I do think, though, that there's one fundamental thing here. Again, it's my opinion. I think you should involve your children in deciding on what the time limits should be. If you empower your children, if they feel that they've had an input into it, they're going to be much more likely to follow it, okay, to buy into the time limits. But it's important that there are time limits. The time limits must suit you. The second category of rules that you need to put in place are location limits, or as the HSE could refer to it as device-free areas, okay. Location limits. I'm really talking about one thing here only, okay. It's very simple. Get the technology out of the bedrooms, okay? When I was doing these talks live around the country, I used to, for the last 7 years, I've driven around the country talking to kids of every age, right? And when I did these talks, particularly in the last 18 months leading up to the lockdown, okay, I was astounded at how many children use TikTok and make TikTok videos in their bedrooms. Okay, particularly girls, young girls, primary school girls. They think that their bedrooms are their studios. They have a sense that it's their private area so that they can do what they want in it. And so what they do is they bring the technology into their bedrooms. And that is absolutely lethal. I'll talk to you a little bit later about TikTok and why that's so bad. But guys, you know something? The bedroom is meant to be the safest and most precious part of a child's life. They should be able to go into their bedroom and know there is no pressure, there is no fear of anything getting them in their bedroom. Give them a device, and you know what? That's when all the bad things happen. Let them take their device into their bedroom. That's when they're staying up till all hours of the morning chatting with their mates. That's when they're being approached by strangers. That's when they're viewing content that they shouldn't be viewing. That's when they're providing private information about themselves to the rest of the world. All of that sort of stuff is happening because they are allowed to take their devices into their bedrooms. So guys, get the technology out of the bedrooms. And it doesn't have to be rocket science. You simply make a rule in your family, no devices in the bedrooms after bedtime. Simple as. Put a place in the kitchen where all the devices can be charged up. That's the way to do it. And just say that's the rule, okay? Remove any opportunity for secret use of internet. You know what I would suggest you do is just say, guys, if you want to go on the internet, there's the kitchen, there's the sitting room. You sit there, you do it. And that way you as an adult can keep a little ear open. You can keep your eye open on what they're doing, and you can basically know what they're doing, okay? I had a friend whose primary school called them up one day about their daughter. Their daughter was 12 years old, right? And their daughter was falling asleep in the class, right? And they didn't know why. And eventually they discovered that what was happening was she was taking her laptop. She'd been given a laptop. She was taking her laptop into her bedroom, and she had discovered pornography. She was fascinated by it. And what she was doing is she was browsing through pornographic sites until all hours of the morning, right? And I said to them, I just said, well, that's crazy, isn't it? Just, why would you do that? And they basically they banned the laptop from the bedroom. They put the laptop in the kitchen, and the problem went away. You see, like I said at the beginning, if you give a child a bucket of ice cream, they will eat a bucket of ice cream. If you give a child a laptop and a thing and they got privacy, they will do what they want to do. They will experiment. They will test the limits. It doesn't make them bad. It doesn't make them evil. It just makes them human. And that's what children do. Okay. We need to put these rules in place. The third set of rules is transparency rules, okay? And this is really to do with the key of the bedroom door, okay? You should, at all costs, know your children's passwords, okay? Particularly if they're primary school. As they get a bit older, maybe you start to loosen the grip on that control. But while they're young, while they are young and foolish and impulsive and all the rest of it, you should have their passwords. But having said that, you still need to show them respect. So it's a balancing act, guys. You need to be able to help them. You need to be able to see what they're doing, but you also need to respect their privacy. Okay. And they need the confidence that you are respecting that privacy. So it's a fine balancing act there that you need to come up with. Okay. Guys, there's no point in having rules if you're not prepared to set some sort of consequences for breaking those rules. Okay. Draw the line in the sand and say, if you take your device into your bedroom after bedtime, then here's the consequence. You're going to lose your device for a day. Okay. So you need to set consequences for breaking the rules, right? And you need to come up with it, and your children need to know what those consequences are. They need to know that, if they step over the line, something's going to happen. Okay. And you need to be brave enough to enforce those consequences. Okay. There's a little truism that you might have heard. If the first time your child breaks the rule, you forgive them, you've lost every future battle. If the first time your child breaks the rule, you punish them, you've won every future battle. The weird thing about us human beings, guys, is that we actually, because we're social creatures, we actually thrive if we know the rules and boundaries. The most miserable people on the planet are the ones who do not know their rules and boundaries. Okay, so you're not being cruel by saying this is the boundary, this is the punishment, this is, etc. You're not being cruel. You're in fact teaching children how to live in society. That's what you're doing. Because all our entire society exists because of the rules and boundaries that are there. If there were no rules and boundaries, it's anarchy. We would all be killing each other. So by teaching your children these little things when they're young, you're actually benefiting them later on in life. Okay. So remember, guys, you are the parent, you're not the friend. One day you will be a friend to your children. But while they're growing up, while they're still immature, while they're youngsters, you are the parent, and your word is law in your house. Okay.